Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Flosstube. Today is Sunday, January 7th. I had to think about that for a second. Today is Sunday, January 2nd, 2024, and I am Deborah and I am so happy to be with you for another episode. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different thing than a normal episode, which is we're going to be going through a WIP parade. So these are all of the WIPs that I am carrying forward into the year from 2023 or older than that. And I'm also going to spend a little bit of time talking about my stitching plans for 2024. Now, if you're a returning viewer, you know that when I say plans, what I really mean is plans. Usually when I make plans, that is the first guarantee or the best guarantee to ensure that I'm going to work on something else entirely. What I'm kind of saying is taking a little phrase from Helen D. I'm shortlisting some projects that I hope to get done in the next couple of months, and but leaving myself enough flexibility that if I go off in a different direction, well, plans changed and they were on the list, but you know what? They didn't make it in the end. So I think that's kind of how I am approaching it. But I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about what I am currently planning to get done in 2024, in addition to my existing WIPs. And I'll talk about kind of, are these things that I want to get done right away? Where are they in the priority lists and things like that? So, if you were joining me for the very first time, I know that WIP parades do tend to bring in some new viewers, so welcome. I hope that you enjoy what you see. I will just share a little bit about myself before we get started, and then I will launch into the content. So, as I mentioned, my name is Deborah. I've been on Flosstube for just over a year at this point, and in real life, in non-cross-stitch life, I am a government library administrator. I live in Connecticut, and I have 2 cats. So oftentimes when people mention me, they're like, da-da-da, she likes cats. So if that's the only fact people know about me, I am totally fine with that. They do occasionally make appearances, but less ups when I'm here in this room than when I'm downstairs in my living room, as we learned during Flossmas this last year. But as I mentioned, I kind of run a government library. I live in Connecticut. I've been here for a couple of years at this point, came here for work to be closer to some family, and I'm getting settled in. And in true Connecticut, New England fashion, we are having a snowstorm today. So it started snowing last night. I would say we got 4 or 5 inches here, and it stopped for a couple of hours, but it has started again, and it's supposed to snow all day. So we will see in the end what that actually looks like. But we haven't gotten any snow in about 2 years, and so everybody I've sort of talked to seems just mostly excited about it, as opposed to thinking about, ugh, snow that I have to deal with. Everybody's just like, it's snow, I'm so excited. So we'll see how we feel about that once we have to actually, shovel or snow blow the driveways. That's the other thing. But for today, we are enjoying the fact that it is winter weather. I still have my Christmas tree up, which I do need to take down in the next couple of days because those are being picked up, but it feels like this is winter. This is what I expect here in New England. So with that, as I mentioned, thank you for joining me, whether you're new or returning viewer. And then what I will do is go through my WIPs for the year and then talk about those plans as I mentioned. So just a few statistics. One of the things that I learned in this last year or that I fell down on in the last year, was really tracking some of the information about my projects. So one of my goals for this year is to get back onto the train of doing that. It's not necessarily like the information is necessary, it's just kind of interesting, and I would like to have it at least for some period of time to keep track of that. So I'm hoping to do more of that. I have most of the information for these projects, but I want to make sure that I, instead of having to sit down over the last week and figure out where I wrote it down or what I could figure out, actually tracking it as we go along. So I entered 2022 with 12 WIPs at the time, and then I'm moving into 2024 with 13 WIPs. So a slight increase, but actually many of those projects were projects that I finished over the last year, and so the WIPs that I'm carrying forward are projects that I started in 2023. So I felt like that was a pretty good ratio. I finished 33 projects in 2023, like finished or either finish stitching them or fully finish them as well. So again, I was really happy with that. I am not an everyday stitcher. I keep making forays, attempts to get to that, but hasn't quite happened yet. But I was really happy with the projects that I completed. And I just want to kind of think about kind of how I can be a little bit more thoughtful or strategic about some of that as we move forward. One of the things that I learned about myself was for bigger projects, because I tend to be mostly a small stitcher, for bigger projects, I like breaking them down into manageable chunks and giving myself mini goals. And when I meet that goal, if it's ahead of schedule or I have some time left, it's not the signal to keep going. It's a signal to say, great, I've met the goal. Let's set it aside, work on something else, and come back to that the next time. So you'll see a little bit that in some of the projects that we're talking about. And I think there are a couple others that I may do something similar like that to help me kind of stay on track rather than stitching until I get tired of something, setting it aside, and then never picking it up again. So that's really what I am hoping to avoid. So moving into the new year with 13 WIPs, I think having that same ratio of finishes, maybe a couple of more, this next year would be really wonderful. And then I do have probably a couple of projects that will take me much of the year that I'll be working on as well. Okay, so it's 6 minutes in. We've been rambling a little bit. Let me grab a sip of coffee and then I will get started on the projects. All right, so I am going to go through these from oldest to newest, and if you're kind of watching and you're like, the first couple projects, you're like, this is not my thing. I'm like, in some ways, it's not really my thing either, but they've been sitting around a while. Tastes have changed a little bit, interests have changed, but they're still on the WIP list, and they're still things that I would like to get done. So I think you'll see some progression of that as we move through as well. So this first project, as I mentioned, is my oldest WIP. And when I say my oldest WIP, I mean this is like 25 years old. I started this when I was in high school, I am pretty sure. And this is a project that I was asked to do by my mom. We saw it in the craft store and it matched some furniture that we had at the time in the living room. And since that time, she and I have both moved houses multiple times. That couch has been recovered at least, I think, twice at this point. So all of the things that led to the project to begin with are very different. But the thing that has not changed is my mom still really loves this project and would like to have it. The problem all along was it was a much bigger project, a much more ambitious project, and a very different style of stitching that I was doing at the time. And honestly still do. And so it really became a struggle to work on a project that it wasn't the kind of stitching that I enjoyed or wanted to do. And so I tried working on it, and I finally just set it aside for many years, but I've kept it because I did do a fair amount of work on it. Like maybe someday this will come back. But I've decided at this point, I am going to finish the project, but I'm not going to finish the entire project. I have come up with a different plan to finish it to a degree and get it off my plate. And I've already run it by her and she's fine with it. I did this over a year ago. It was in my WIP parade and then I barely touched it. So this is the project to start with. This is a Dimensions Gold kit and this is called Wreath of Roses. And the copyright on this I think is like 1997 and I think I started it somewhere not long after it. It's a really beautiful project. All of those colors and the florals. It's a lot of confetti stitching. It's a lot of blended floss. It's got metallic threads. It's full coverage, basically. All kinds of things that I just don't enjoy stitching, and I didn't know at the time that there was a different style of stitching, and I didn't know that that was something that I wouldn't like, and so I started working on it, and anyway, I don't need to keep rambling about this. I started it, it's not my thing, but I want to finish it. So here are the flosses. There are many flosses, and you blend them, and you use them, and this metallic stuff is awful. Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. But let me show you how far I got, because I did make good progress. So that is my complete project at this point. And I obviously started with the wreath sort of top center start and then moved around. So the problem for many years was like, there's no natural way to stop it. Like, if I wanted to make it symmetrical, even if I only did half the wreath, I would still have to complete another half of the project in order to get it done. And so the conclusion that I finally came to was this is the right size for a strawberry. It's not going to be symmetrical because obviously you've got the wreath on one side, but you could turn this into a strawberry and my mom would be happy with that. It's going to be huge. I just need to do a little bit, I want to do a little bit of stitching over here so that the ribbon isn't right along the seam. I'd like to basically do maybe another just 1.5 to 2 inches maybe of stitching, just so that it's not quite right on the seam or right on the back of it, so you can see more of the ribbon. And then I may need to do some of that, and then I'll need to do the back stitching. I did work on this a little bit. I believe that I did this flower and started this leaf this last year. I believe that that's all the progress that I made. I had good intentions and I picked it up and I still was like, this is just not my thing. It's a mental block. So what I've decided is I don't want to sit through another year of having this weighing on me. And so I am going to get this done this year. I am going to sit down and I'm going to figure out a plan. How much do I actually have to do in order to get this done? And then just knock it off, because she wants it done, I want it done, and it would be wonderful to have this thing kind of off the to-do list. And what I learned this last year is just making vague, like, oh yeah, I have an idea, I'll get to that. I'm not going to pick this project up if I am not making myself pick this project up. So it needs to get done, and I need to make a plan in order to do that. So the like ambitious goal is either for her birthday or for Mother's Day, which gives me till May. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But my plan is, like, I don't want to carry this into another year. So this project needs to get done. Okay. That was the first project. That was like the most negative thing I'm going to say today, because it was just, that project is sure a heck of a thing. The rest of these are other projects that I've got some other things to say about, and I'm actually excited to work on them. So the next one that I have is one that I started, I think, early in 2013, sort of based on some information that I have. And this is a Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. This was one of their early series of the month, and it was Fruit of the Month. I think it may have actually been their very first one. And I was originally going to do each of these, and I was going to turn it into a baby book and all kinds of things. Like, I'm never going to finish this project. I have done one of them, and that is the January grapefruit, or orange. And then what I did last year at the start of the year is I unpicked just the face, and then I had done a label of it rather than the month. Because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this back in with colors that are surrounding it. And I'm going to turn it into a pomander. I said this in my last WIP parade. I still have not figured out how to say that word. It's the oranges that you see at Christmas time that have had cloves pushed into them, and then they kind of dry up, and then they smell nice, and they have these decorations in them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to design a little design for this, and then use French knots and a brown thread to kind of make this into pomander. So there is really not that much work to do to finish this one. It was also one on my list last year where I didn't make any definite plans to finish it. This is another one where it needs to be done. At this point, we're coming up on the 10-year, 11-year anniversary of this project. It is not that much work. I'm going to get it done. So that is from Fruit of the Month by Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. And then those are the two really, really old projects. The rest of these are 2020 or newer, which I feel like is pretty good. So the next one is one that I started in April of 2023. I only have a black and white cover on this one, and this is by Happy Sloth, and this is the captains. So these are the captains from what were at the time all of the Star Trek series. Since this has happened, since this pattern was produced, there has been a proliferation and a renewal of Star Trek, which is part of the reason I haven't worked on this project. So it's no longer a complete list of all of the captains and their ships. So I had started this for a specific reason. I was going to go on a Star Trek cruise. I was like in the Star Trek fandom for a period of time, like really into the Star Trek fandom. And I was going to go on a cruise and I was going to make a beach bag, and this was going to be the panel of the beach bag. COVID happened. The cruise did not happen. Fast forward, and I was like, I still really like this pattern. But on the other hand, if I'm not going to turn it into a beach bag, which I'm not going to do at this point, and I'm not really active in the fandom anymore, I was like, what am I going to do with this? Like, what would I do with this? So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, like, what would I do with this project? And I've also spent a lot of time thinking very pedantic thoughts, one of which started out as Michael's hair is wrong. Like, if you're really talking about this person and their captaincy, like if Cisco has a goatee, Michael's hair is wrong. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, how do I, should I rechart it? What should I do about it? And then since then, not only is that something that would need to be sort of changed for my personal like feelings, there's also been Strange New Worlds, there's been Picard, there's been Lower Decks, etc. And so like there has been like disco really did lead to a whole new era of Star Trek. And so this is only a very small portion of the captains. And in many cases, it's no longer the captain that's sort of the star of the show. So I was like, what do I do about that? I was like, I'm not going to rechart. These are the things that you think about at like 3 o'clock in the morning when you're, thinking about things. So I just basically put this project on hold because I was like, I just don't know what to do about it. And I was, as of even just this morning, I was planning to just not UFO this project, but to say, I'm setting it aside. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. I'm not going to get rid of it, but I'm not planning to make any progress on it this year. But then I realized, well, first, I've made a couple of decisions. One is I'm just not going to stitch Michael. If I stitch the other 5, that's classic Trek. So in the same way that there's like classic Doctor Who and modern Doctor Who, and they're sort of kept in 2 different buckets, there's classic Star Trek and then there's modern Star Trek. And if I just take Michael off, I have classic Trek and it's complete. And so that is something I can easily do. I never showed you where I am in this project. I didn't get very far. I finished Cisco and I started on Picard. I like it. I really like this project. I love the style. Although it's no longer on their website, and so that always makes me go, not quite sure what's going on there. It's entirely possible it's just because because it's not really accurate anymore. I really like this project, and it's great like retreat stitching because it's just, you do outline and then you do fill in. But I was just like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And this fabric it's fine. It's nothing that I hate. It's nothing that I love. It's just kind of a very basic blue even weave. And so I was like, I don't really want to, it's not something I sit and go, oh gosh, this is just so great to work on. So all of these things were working against this project. So I've decided, one, solving the problem was simply taking off Michael was where I had gotten to as of a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, I just need to think about what else I can do with these. And I think this is where I am at this point. I'm not going to stitch them as one piece. I'm going to stitch them individually, and then I could finish them potentially individually if I can come up with the right finishing idea. And my current thought, this is the thing I was thinking this morning, is I could get a couple of just very small frames. The dimensions, I have to figure out which ones would work. But if I just did a couple of very tiny frames, they would basically just look like, family portraits or something like that you've hung on the wall. And then I could just do a little collection of portraits and hang them. And I think that would be funny and cute. So I need to see if I can actually find a set of frames that dimensionally fit. Like it's about 3 inches wide, just under 3 inches wide, but it's over 4 inches tall. So am I going to be able to find a frame that quite fits that? I'm not sure yet. That's the plan. I think finishing them individually, just focusing on the 5 classic captains. And I've been meaning to do a Star Trek rewatch, like watch everything, because there are episodes that I've definitely missed along the way, scattered throughout. So this would also be something to fun to stitch on while I'm doing that. So that's the plan. We'll see what happens. But again, I think it's one where I need to have the finish idea in place. And if I have the finish idea, then I will be encouraged to work on it, because it won't just be a project that's going to sit in a box. So that is The Captains by Happy Sloth. Another one here, I can't show you a cover of this one because all I have is the pattern itself, but I started this one on May 14, 2022, and I'll just show you where I am to give you an idea of what the project is. And this is called Hobbit Mealtime, and it was from a designer on Etsy. I will look that up and post it. And it basically is just the quote from the movie. It's like breakfast, second breakfast, 11sies, lunch, etc. And so it's just the simple words in kind of various different fonts, and then it uses 2 different colors, and I'm using 2 different greens. These are both Victorian Motto, Christmas Green and the Emerald City. I think they're really beautiful. And this is another one that I like it. I know what I'm going to do with it, which is I'm going to hang it near the cat food bowls, because one of my cats is obsessed with food. He is obsessed with food, and it would just make me laugh. But it's also, as I learned this last year, not one that ever rises to the top of the priority list. And I was thinking, this is another one I was thinking, I may just set this aside, put it on the back burner. But I was watching Amy Gable Stitchers yesterday, and she was talking about how she does some of her kind of what she does for like one thread at a time projects and things like that. And I don't think that I would be successful if I just said, I'm going to make the goal of for this year, I'm going to stitch every day. I think I need to give myself a micro goal. Like, I did that in December, and I stitched every day in December, but it was because I was working on a specific project that I was able to achieve in that amount of time. And then when that project was over, I didn't stitch for a couple of days. So I'm thinking for this one, I'm going to do one of 2 things. I'm going to either say, and I'm not going to say do a thread every day, but if I say do a thread, length of thread on a day that you are stitching, like if I've made the decision to stitch on that particular day, I need to start by doing a length of this thread. It takes like 15 minutes. It's really not a lot of time. And then I can go on the work on the project that I was actually going to do that day. That would get me progress. Or I could set myself basically a micro challenge and just say, just stitch 1 thread a day on this specific project, and when it's over, you're done. You don't have to keep stitching 1 thread every day. You don't have to keep stitching every day if you don't want to. So that's what I'm thinking at the moment. We'll see how it goes. But that, I think, is a way to challenge myself and get myself through some of the stitching. Like, this is kind of what I learned over the last year, is what I like to stitch, why I like to stitch it, what encourages me, what discourages me. And so I'm thinking about giving myself some of these mini challenges or kind of plans for specific projects to get me through them. Whereas I think the randomness of WIP Go, or the kind of, I know that your board, your rules, all of those kinds of things. But to me, I think WIP Go would just discourage me if I'm just thinking about it as all of my stitching for the year. Whereas if I give myself kind of micro goals for specific projects, I think that will work better for me, is where I am at this point. So that was Hobbit Mealtime. All right. This next one is a project that I started also, let me see, July 19, 2022. And this is one that I am planning to finish and hang up in my dining / sunroom, which I have not decorated really in the 3 years that I've lived here, like not on the wall. And I really need to get something up because it's getting kind of plain. And I need to get this project done. It's not a difficult stitch. It's just a little bit different style. And again, is not kind of the project that I think of immediately to get started on. So this is by Picota, which is an Italian designer. And it's this really cute little scene of sheep. And in French, I think it says, "The meek sheep all dance," is what I think the closest to the translation that I can guess. is. And my plan for this all along was to make it really big, like make it a wall hanging, not just this little one. It comes with the kit, comes with the linen and all of the DMC, but I decided I wanted to do it a little bit differently. And after a couple of false starts, I came up with, I bought some 10 count Tula, which is kind of like Ada, but is slightly different. And so it's this really beautiful kind of mottled green. And as you can see, it's huge and it's 10 count, and I am stitching it over 2, which means that this is functionally a 5 count, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be really big. And I am stitching it using DMC. I'm using all of the called for DMC. And I am stitching it with 6 strands of floss. So I'm separating them out to kind of fluff them up, and then I'm stitching with 6 strands. And so it goes very quickly because 6 strands when you're when you're stitching on this large of a project, that floss goes very, very quickly. So I really love the project. I think it's going to be really cute to have up on the wall. I am leaving, they have smiles on their faces in addition to their eyes. I'm leaving the smiles off and just doing their eyes. So I have to finish that third one right there. And as you can see, it's kind of just an outline. It's a sketch that you then use a lot of backstitching on to fill in. So I need to finish that third block and work on the fourth block. And you'll notice I'm not going to be able to finish that, stitch that other side on this one. So I have an identical second piece of fabric that I'm going to stitch the large one on, and then they're going to go, I have a mirror up on the wall, and one is going to go on either side of the mirror, and they're going to kind of dominate that end of the room. And I think I have stretcher bars that I am planning to basically kind of just bend them around and then staple them onto. I may add some like fabric or kind of quilted edges to them. I'm not sure, or I may just do the fabric. So anyway, a project that I really do need to get some decorations up in my living room or in my dining room on the wall. But again, it's just because it's a little bit different. It's large. I have to use a Q-snap, which they don't really fit in my hands well. So it's one of those projects where the logistics of it is what's keeping me from working on it, but I will really like to have the project done. It's one where I may not necessarily enjoy the stitching, but I will be very, very happy to have the project done. So that was Le Mouton Doux by Picoti Picota, and I started that in May of 2022. So I think, let's see here, I think we're getting close to the 2023 projects at this point. Yes, that was all of our pre-2023 projects, and I did have a number of them that I started the year, as I said, last year with 12 projects, and I'm down to, is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So I got 7 of my prior ones done in 2023, which I think is a good year, and then I really do want to get progress on these. I don't know if I'll finish the captains. We'll see. It depends on it, but I really would like to get these done. What I have learned about myself is I'm okay leaving something for at least 1 full year or like 2 cycles. Like I don't mind having a project that I start in winter of this year, leaving it, not finishing it, and then getting to it again next winter. But by the time we get to next winter, like the second time around, I want to have it done. I get antsy if it's going forward beyond that. And that's really what I learned this year is I don't want to just have projects that are just sitting for a really long time anymore. I want to get them done, get them off, because there are always more projects. There are always new things to be working on. And if I don't focus on getting things done, the things that are not immediately what's rising to the top of my interests will sit and sit. And I don't want to do that. I'd like to just keep cycling through and really focusing on really only having a backlist or a WIP list that's a year-ish old for each of my projects. So that's where we are. Okay, so that leaves us with our 2023 WIPs, which I'll get into in just a second. All right, this next one is a series by Kathy Haberman, and this was her first club kit, and this was the Gather Round series. These are the threads from 3 of the 4. I just haven't done the other one yet. Really lovely colors. And this was, as I mentioned, her first club kit, and it was called the Gather Round series. And you signed up in advance. You didn't really know. You had some sneak peeks. You knew what the theme was, but you didn't know what the projects were going to be until you got them. And then you receive them kind of, I think we got them over the course of about 10 months. And I had really good intentions when I started. I started it early, and then I just got distracted with other projects. So they are, in the end, we've got Gather Wildflowers, and each of them is, there are 3 designs, one of which has a phrase in the center, excuse me, and then they are all seasonal. And so we had Gather Wildflowers, Gather Butterflies, Gather Pumpkins, and Gather Pine Cones. I have not heard yet when these will be released. I assume that they will be. I wouldn't be surprised if you started seeing these at market, at least some of them this year, but I don't know that for sure. And as I mentioned, I had really good intentions. I started this one very early on, and that was where I got on that first one. But then I will admit, I've mentioned this in the past, I am a typography snob. Like, I am very picky about fonts, and the font that was used for the words just didn't speak to me. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about how could I rechart this? What would I write? How would I do that? And it was a little bit more mental effort and work than I really wanted to get into. And so I never really just got through it. But I've decided I'm going to go in a completely different direction. Rather than stitching them and finishing them on these magnetic boards, which we received as part of the kit, and they're just magnetized and you're supposed to just basically take them on and off. Rather than displaying them like this, and rather than trying to solve the issue of what do I want the center one to be, I am only going to stitch the other 2. So I'm only going to stitch 2 of the 3 out of each piece. And then I have bought a piece. I'm going to finish them double-sided. I think I'm going to do them on a double-sided clock. We will see. It's on its way in the mail. And that way, whichever side you're looking at, I'll just take the clock face out, and then you can see one of the designs from either side. We'll see how that works in practice rather than in theory. But I like the fact that you can see both of them. I like that it's a round finish. And then you won't feel like you're not missing the third one. It will feel like you're supposed to only see 2 of them. So that's the plan. I had taken this to work over the year because I had also had intentions of like stitching during my lunch hour, and that really went nowhere again. So when I'm going to get these done, I'm not sure. It's not my top priority in terms of stitching. This may be one that I do seasonally, but I have quite a lot of other seasonal pieces that I want to get done. So we'll see. I may, when I get sort of the clock and see if I can make it work, that may spur me on, but this may actually be one that I kind of sit and wait on until next year when I've cleared out some of my other seasonal projects. And then that would be maybe my year-long seasonal project next year. And if I knew that that was what was happening, I think it would get me over the antsiness. But anyway, that is the current thought process on the Gather Round series. I'm going to need to start making myself room over here. Okay, the next one that I am working on is, this is when I fell down on a couple of sals that I had agreed to participate in, like one-on-one sals last year, and I had, again, good intentions and didn't make my way through all of that. So this is a project I started at the end of May, and this is All Sorts by Stitcherovia. There is another design by another designer that is similar to this, that they came out about the same time. But this is one that I have a family member who lives on a boat in Alaska and has a lot of time to stitch. And so we had done kind of just like one-on-one sals. We had done a little project. This was our next one, and she got it done right away. And I had good intentions and I started it, and then I kind of got overwhelmed with all of the plans that I had for my summer stitching last year. and it just didn't get done, and I just let it go. But I would like to catch up on this and finish it. So I need to also make a plan for making this happen. And I may just divide it up into 4s or 6s or something like that. So again, I have some mini challenges on it because I think it's really cute. So that is all sorts, and I am using all of the called for DMC, which are just like, this is a glorious palette. These are so fun to stitch with. So I love those colors. And then this is my progress. And this is on a mystery 36 count white linen, and it's really fun to stitch on. I just need to make a plan and keep going because it's just, like I said, really fun. So that is one of the first stitch along failing that I had last year. The next project that I started was also at the end of May. And I am stitching this Silver Lining Creations. The cover is really dark, but what it is it's a lakeside scene with trees and water, and then fireworks that you're seeing reflected in the water. I love fireworks, and I just thought this was a really fun project, and so I am stitching it on. Let me see here. That was my progress. That's as far as I got. I'm stitching it on a 32 count amethyst. I don't have the dyer for this one or who produced it. And I am stitching it using DMC and a toile. It calls for Balger, which is a precursor to Krynic. And I really didn't work on Krynic. And so I decided to use the DMC Etoile, which has just a little bit of sparkle in it, because I didn't want it to be like really, really in your face metallic threads either. And so I'm using the Etoile that has just a little bit of sparkle. And so I just kind of pulled equivalent colors close to it. I may use a metallic thread just for a little bit, but my guess is no. We'll see. So I had good intentions with this one. It was the first time I was stitching on a dark fabric, and so I have to make sure that I have really good lighting, but it's also just a very complicated project. Like, it's one that I have a working copy of, and I have to mark off exactly where I am because, you know, those trees, for example, there's a lot of a stitch here, a stitch there, and then you change the color and then whatnot. And so it's a project that you really have to focus on. And so it was just a little more mental effort than I had at the time. I do want to get this done. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I'm not quite sure. I need to figure out how to sort of encourage myself through that one, because it's another one where I think what I learned fairly quickly is I will probably be very happy to have it done. I'm not sure that the stitching itself is something that I'm going to enjoy, but I really would like to do that. So that is Reflections on the 4th. The next one is my other Sal that I did not fulfill my end of the bargain. Patty, I am so sorry. I never followed up on this. We were doing a Christiane Dahlbeck stitch along, and I picked from this. This is basically something half year, a wonderful half year. She is a German designer that I really like. And I had pulled this book, and Patty had reached out and said, I love her too. Let's do a stitch along. And she very quickly got her project done, and I had good intentions. And again, just kind of I got overwhelmed with all of the projects that I had started in the summer. I had like a start fest, and then there was just no way I was going to get them all done. And so this was another one that I just had to let go. But the project that I chose was from that book. And it doesn't have a specific title for this pattern. That's often the case with European designers. I've just been calling it Flowers and Bees. And I love how lifelike those bumblebees are. This is my working copy with the flowers. So I did start it, and this is on a Picture This Plus yellow called Chime, and that was as far as I got. I got that first bee done, which is just absolutely beautiful. There is some back stitching, there's some partial stitching, some over one stitching, all of which is very common for Christiane Dahlbeck. And then I am using I believe these are equivalent DMC colors. So it's a really beautiful palette. It's just a wonderful kind of spring summer piece. I just kind of, like I said, got overwhelmed with the projects that I had, but this is a project that I am going to get done this year. Like, Patty, it's going to happen. I will catch up and I will get this project done because I think it's going to be beautiful, and I will be very excited to have that in my collection. The next one that I have, oh, this was my project bag for that one. The next one I have is a Jardin Prive piece that I started, ABChat, ABCat, and it's just this little outline of a cat with the alphabet inside of it. And I am stitching that. It's not a big project. It's a lot of fill-in, but it's only, 41 by 80, not a big project at all. And I was able to purchase this on her website. And I started this on June 8, 2023. I'm stitching it on an 18 count mystery linen, and I'm using Anchor Black, so Anchor 403. And this is as far as I got. I've got the tail. And so I'm stitching it on 18 count over 2, and so it's going to be quite large. And it's going to go in this room because I'm going to turn it into a doorstop. So it's going to be... probably will finish it kind of in the round with a bottom and have walnut shells or rice or something in it to make it quite heavy, to be a doorstop. And again, it's not a difficult project at all, but I am finding that I'm having to mark off where I am on the piece so that I can keep track of it. But again, one I would really like to get done. And I had started a sal called the Constant Cat Sal last year. It's still active. This is basically just, if you're stitching on a cat related project, put it on. It's a constant sal in the sense that it's just open in perpetuity if you're working on one cat project. If you want to constantly have a cat project on the go, and as you finish one, you start another one, however you would like to interpret it, that is it's constant cat sal. And I had done a couple pieces for it, and this is one of them. So it's constant in the sense that I still have an active WIP that's a cat sal, but I probably should finish it so I can move on to the next one. So that's where I am on ABCat. All right, the next one is something that I started at the end of August. And Pam, who is the owner of Stitch New England, has a Fancy Ladies get-together, Zoom get-together on a monthly basis. And Fancy Ladies are not usually my style. I think they're beautiful, but not really my normal stitching. But I saw one that I loved, and it's a Nora Corbett, and it is called Miss Spider. And I think that she's fantastic. I think that it's a beautiful pattern, but I also think that she looks like a Gothic librarian. And so what I'm going to do is I am just going to stitch the central figure in her dress and the arms and leave off the other pieces. So I am doing a Fancy Lady, but I'm going to do a kind of like my own take on a Fancy Lady. And so I am going to be, I just stitch this as I'm able to join in on the monthly Zoom. I don't really work on it in between, but it's going quite quickly. I don't think it's going to take me all that long to get through it. I think at this point I've missed as many as I have attended, but hopefully with the new year, I'll be on a good track for that. So this is my progress on Miss Spider. And I am stitching this on 36 count Beetroot by Fox and Rabbit. I think that color is just fantastic and goes so well with the palette. It's a very limited palette. And so I think that'll be wonderful. And then I am deciding if I want to do beading where it calls for beading, or I may use like a metallic floss, maybe some etoile. I do need to make that decision because I am stitching it on a 32 count, the regular called for beads won't fit. So I'll just need to find either a substitute bead, which I know I can do, or I may go with the metallic floss route. I haven't decided which, but I have some time. So that's where we are on Miss Spider. Again, didn't take the project back over. Got to keep them organized because that way I'll be able to be on track. This next one is a project that I started toward the end of the year. Let me see here on my little cheat sheet. I started this in November, and this is Turnip the Beet by Hands On Design. I really do love her patterns. I've had this for a couple of years, and I was like, I really need to get this stitched. And so I am going to be stitching the black version. It has called for DMC for both versions. And so I started it when I was at the farm, stitching at the farm in the fall. And I am stitching it on 20 count Aida. It's just kind of a plain Zweigart Aida. And this is where I am. I did start in the center. I don't remember why I started in the center, but I did. It's really fun. I love the colors. It's just a really cheerful color palette. And one of the things that I like about this is it kind of has the palette is something that you feel like, yeah, I can see that as an autumn piece. I see it as a summer piece, a spring piece. It can go a lot of different ways. So I'm using the called for DC on that. And I just need, this is an easy project. I just need to get that one done. So that is Turnip the Beet. And then this is my last active WIP. This is another stitch along that I am coordinating, and this is the A Year of ABC's Sal. And what we are doing is we are stitching the Little House Needleworks ABC's series, and we're dividing them up into thirds and stitching each third over the course of a month, like over the course of 3 months. So by the end of a full year, we will have stitched all 4 projects, but we're taking 3 months in order to do each of these patterns. So what we're doing is we're dividing them up. So in the first month, you stitch A through I. In the second month, you stitch J through R. And in the last month, you stitch S through Z. And we're stitching them just ahead of the season. So for our December piece, which is actually right there, or for the winter piece, we stitched that in September, October, and November so that it was ready and done if you wanted to get it finished and up for December, January, and February. And then in those months, we're working on spring so that if you want to, you can get it fully finished and have it up for spring in your display. So that's kind of the first time I had tried this, like, systematic approach. I had done one annual piece like this, but a systematic approach to a series as well. And so we have a couple of us stitching on it. And so I am currently working, of course, on spring. And this is where I am. And I am stitching this on 32 count My Little Dove by XJU Design. And again, it's just a really lovely color palette. I didn't use, if I had the called for, I pulled the called for. If I didn't, I just pulled an equivalent floss from my stash. So some of them are called for, some of them are not, but really lovely pattern, really lovely kind of palette. And so at this point, I was running a little bit behind in December, but I have gotten my December portion done, and then I have started in on my January portion, so I'm not quite halfway. Although I will say there's always one motif in here that is very stitch intensive, and that was this one. So I got that one done at the Connecticut Stitching Circle yesterday. So I am technically not quite halfway through my January segment, but I am halfway through the piece at this point, and I have plenty of time left in January to continue on with that. So I really love this one. One of the things that I found not frustrating, but a little bit repetitive about the winter piece, can I do this? The winter piece is all of the letters are white and all of the motifs are primarily white. They have accent colors, but it was a lot of white stitching, which is just, one, it's white stitching, but it was also just a little bit repetitive. And what I like about this one is there are many colors. There are several different colors for the letters. I feel like the distribution of colors is a little more consistent or a little more even in this one. And so I really am liking that one. Plus they're just beautiful colors. So that is Spring ABCs. And if you would like to join, please feel free at any point to do that. We would love to have you. All right, so those are my, and I started that one right at the end of December. So those are my active current WIPs. If that's all you came to see, thank you so much for checking them out. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the projects and listening to my personal ramblings about how I'm going to get them done and what's going to happen next and why they haven't happened yet. If you would like to stick around for sort of the plans segment of the video, I will move into that, but you'll see some of the kind of following up on a couple of these, as well as what I would like to add into the rotation this year. Because I did learn, like, I do finish or more than I keep moving forward, so I feel like that's a good thing. So I'll have another sip of coffee, I'll move these over, and then we'll move into the plans. All right, so the first project that I want to get started on is one that was already on my short list. Like, I knew that I wanted to get this piece started because it's a winter piece. I don't think I said this at all. I have learned that I am very much a seasonal stitcher. I can kind of play with that a little bit around the edges of a season, but there will come a point where I'm like, okay, winter's over. I'm done stitching winter, or I'm done stitching Christmas. And I want to make sure that I am very mindful of that this year so that I don't sort of get into the position I was last year of just being overwhelmed with starts, or not feeling like I have too many things on my plate, or just knowing I'm not going to get to that. And so being a little more thoughtful about what I start and what I kind of move on to. So this is, I have several winter pieces, I have several spring pieces, and then I have shortlisted, those are all shortlisted. I have shortlisted a couple of things for summer, autumn, Christmas, but I'm not going to get to those today because I feel like that's months away and who knows what will happen. So, but since today is also a snow day, I'm going to start this piece today because it's very much a snow piece. I'm not going to do a traditional snow day stitch, which is a piece that you only work on when it's snowing, because I don't know if it's going to snow again anytime soon. And this is a piece that I really want to get done and up this winter. So I'm going to start it today, but then I'm just going to keep working on it. So this is also one that I only have in black and white, but this is Clara's knitting sampler. Oh, that's showing up okay. And it says, "Dear Diary, I spent the day indoors with my knitting, made good progress on my mittens, best to bed, snow." And this is from the Sampler Girl, and this was designed a number of years ago. It is actually an out-of-print pattern, but she is on Etsy and has some of her other designs on Etsy, and if you reach out to her through there, people are having good success getting her to respond, and she will sell it to you directly. I think it was about $10. And so I had been looking for this for a while, and just nobody seemed to have it in stock. And so I wound up eventually, I had started reaching out to her and didn't get a response, heard in the meantime that other people had. And so I tried again and was able to get a copy. So, but for whatever reason, my color printer, which is extremely temperamental, will not print this pattern. So all I have is black and white, but it's a really lovely color palette. It's bright and cheerful. Definitely winter colors, but also very cheerful and bright. So that is the called for DMC on that piece. And I'm going to stitch it on this Forbidden Fiber fabric. It's as you can see, it was a one-off color, and it's a 32 count opalescent Belfast linen. And so it's got just a little bit of kind of a multicolor opalescent, and I think that will be a cute piece. I think that'll be great for this because I wanted to go with a traditional kind of sampler neutral color for the background on it. And so I am going to be stitching that this year very soon. One of the things I have been thinking about is I know how to knit very basic, but I'm more of a crocheter. And so I had thought about changing it to crochet, but I think I may just leave it as knitting because I think it just makes a little more sense for it to be knitting. I don't know. I also am just like, I don't know if I really need to rechart it to personalize it that much. I think I'm just going to use knitting. So that is Clara's knitting sampler. So that is one that I will be starting when I'm done filming this video. All right, the next one is one that I have joined in on with somebody else who's already working on this project. Tracy from OG Stitchery had posted on Instagram maybe a week, 10 days ago, that she was working on this winter typography, and this is by Pine Mountain Designs. And I have had this pattern in my stash for over a decade, I think. It came with the kitted linen. It was the only way to get it at the time. I don't know if that's still the case. But I think this is just so much fun. And the color palette is gorgeous. These are the DMC. I love these colors. And Tracy had posted that she was starting work on it. And I was like, oh, that's been in my list forever. And she's like, well, join in. So I am going to be joining in with this soon. It's a winter piece. This is definitely one. I don't know if I will get it done this year or not, but I hope to get it started, make good progress, and then maybe this is one that will get done next winter. We'll see. Because I do have a couple of other winter pieces I really do want to get done this year. The next one is another hands-on design piece, and this is So Much Fun. And I love that kind of blue palette. I have a couple of these little cutouts that I got in Germany years ago, like on massive sale. Like what you can see is it was like reduced and reduced and reduced. And so I have 4 of these. I have 2 blue ones. I have a white one. And I have a green one. And I'm going to use the 2 blue and a white. And so rather than having to kind of finish those pieces and mount them on triangular, I will be able to just stitch these, and I can just maybe run a ribbon or something like that through them and they will be done. I might put like a piece of lightweight felt or something on the back to seal them, but that is so much fun, and I've done the calculations. They will just fit, at least lengthwise. They do fit, so I just need to kind of figure out exactly where to start and work on those. And then I'm going to be using sulky threads. I had a number of sulky threads that I had bought, and it matched some of the palette. I'm going to be making some changes to kind of brighten them up, and I bought some of the little packs. Excuse me. I bought a couple of packs on Amazon for another project, and then I have most of what I need for that, but I wound up buying a couple of others just to kind of brighten up. So at this point, I have quite a lot of different sulky that I can pull from, and so I'm just going to kind of pull things that I think will work for that design. And so it will be a brighter version of it because I want to make it stand out on that blue thread, on that blue fabric. But I think that'll be a fun little project. So that is So Much Fun by Hands-On Design. These are just the supplies for the next couple of seasonal ABC series. These are the summer and autumn pieces, and I'll be using a little more of that My Little Dove by XG Design, as well as Grandpa's Sleeve by XG Design, and that will be for autumn and then also for summer. So those will also be coming up in the to-do list as we move into those seasons. The next one is, I've given myself the task of a year-long project. I was like, I did 2 last year. I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do the ABCs, but it's 4 pieces and it'll be fine. And I'm not going to do 2 at a time. So what am I doing? I'm going to do 2 annual projects at a time. And this is from the book, The Magic of Christmas to Cross Stitch by Véronique Ongenger. She is a French designer. And if you watched my Flossmas, if you watched my videos before, you'll know that I have a fondness, let's say it politely, a fondness for advent calendars. In the same way that some people like decorate with like nutcrackers everywhere or reindeer everywhere, apparently I'm the advent calendar lady. And so I just keep making and stitching advent calendars or just buying advent calendars and decorating with them. And so this book is a whole series of different cross stitch patterns. They're really beautiful, kind of various different things about Christmas. And so this is, for example, is just one of the first designs, but included throughout the book is also an advent calendar. It's these small kind of rectangular pieces. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch just the advent calendar, and my goal is to do 2 a month. And that way I will have all 24 done by the time December. by December next year, I will have all of them done. I know how I'm going to finish them. They're not a huge amount of stitching, but I am going to have to keep on pace. So that's my goal, is to do those this month. One of the things that I am going to do is I'm going to make quite a number of changes to the project. I am going to stitch the outlines as they are graphed, but many of them are these kind of backstitched or just red and white versions of elements that are in the larger designs. And I would like to actually stitch the fully colored versions of them. So for example, you can see the candy cane is here and is fully colored, as opposed to just the backstitch version. There is one of those candies that is in this wreath. And so what I've done is I've gone through and I have picked out elements from the larger design that I will stitch inside the advent calendar so that they are full color versions rather than the black and white, or excuse me, the red and white backstitching. In many cases, I was able to pull almost directly from the pattern. In some, I went in a completely different direction, but I did go through and kind of make all of my notes on that. And I've pulled all of the DMC. It's quite a large palette, but there are like 24 of these different designs. So I think it's a really lovely, it's a very soft palette. It does have some traditional Christmas colors in it, but a lot of different things as well. So I think that will be fun to work on. And then I am going to stitch them on perforated paper. I don't think I said that. I'm going to stitch them on perforated paper. And so I have cut up all of my little different pieces, and then I will do the outlines, put the numbers, and then stitch them. So I think that'll be fun. And because they're small and portable, I will feel like I get a finish quite regularly, and I can kind of work on that rather than having to manage a big piece of fabric or, something like that. So that is the advent calendar from The Magic of Christmas. The next one is a piece that I've owned for a couple of years, and I really love it. And I think I'm going to get it started and get it as an active WIP because I would like to get it done fairly quickly. As you can kind of see, I'm in the process of making this kind of not a sampler wall, but I'm going to put a number of different pieces of design wall behind me, and I've started working on that, but I have been thinking about what other pieces will go up there. And I think that this is going to be one of them. And this is by Heartstring Samplery. And it's called the Simple Living Sampler. And it says, I still find each day too short for all of the thoughts that I want to think, all of the walks that I want to take, all of the books that I want to read, and all of the friends I want to see. And that's a John Burroughs quote. And so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to stitch the entire thing, but I will stitch just the quote, and I will add the author attribution down there at the bottom rather than the name and location. And I want to stitch it on kind of that traditional kind of sampler color. So this is 32 count Duxbury by Fox and Rabbit. I think that's going to be a really beautiful kind of a sampler piece. And I am going to stitch it in just one color. So I've pulled this one from Color and Cotton, and this is called Frosted Spruce. And I think that that will look really lovely on that fabric and on the wall. I want it to be very simple. I'm probably going to do just a stitch, a little bit of it, just to make sure that you can see all of the floss on the fabric quite well. But that's the plan, is to stitch that this year and then add it to this wall behind me when it's done. The next one is another kind of 4-season piece, and I need to figure out when I'm going to get this started and how I'm going to break it down. But this is a Curtis Bowinger piece, and it's called Season to Season, the Apple Branch. And I had showed this in a past kit parade. What I love about this one is it is omnidirectional. Every direction is actually aligned with that season. So if you finished it in a square, you could actually just rotate that piece and change the display every season to match that season. It's not a huge amount of stitching, but I think it's lovely. So it would be using called for DMC there. So great color palette. And I was deciding what I want to stitch it on. It is stitched on 25 count and it's stitched over 2, so it's quite large. And I do have this Lori Holt Barley, which is a 25 count even weave, so I could do it on that. I also have a 36 count Color and Cotton. I think this one is a limited edition, yeah. But this is a 36 count, again, kind of a really nice sampler neutral. So I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to use yet, if I want it to be larger or smaller. Although I did actually just get a square frame from Michaels. It was one of those custom frames that didn't get used in the end that I think would work really well on the large size for this. So I may have just answered that question, but this is one that I do want to get started so that I can have it, and then I will need to just edit that frame so I can actually change it and rotate it every season. So that is the Season to Season Apple Branch by Curtis Bowinger. Then I have just a couple of pieces that are also just on the short list. I haven't kitted them up. I haven't done anything with them, but if I find that there is time in my stitching during the season, these are some that I have put on the little list of stuff that I would like to get done if I can. So one of those is by the Cricut Collection, and this is called Carrot Cake. And I would actually stitch this one, which is an umbrella that looks like a carrot. I had picked up a whole bunch of these Cricut Collection pieces, almost all of which are spring pieces, and so I was like, I should get started on those. But I think I would like to stitch that one. I think it would be really cute. So that one is on kind of the short list. I also have another Sampler Girl piece, and this is on Travel with Jane Austen. I would only stitch it's kind of like a quote sampler, and I would stitch just that very first one, which says, "If adventures do not befall a young lady in her own village, she must seek them abroad." And it's a quote from Northanger Abbey, which is one of my favorite Jane Austen novels, and it's a quote that I like. So I would stitch just that one. I might turn it into a drum, something like that, but that one would be another really quick stitch there. And then the last one is from another Veronique Enganger book. This one is called Retro Cross Stitch. Not all of these have kind of a model stitched for them. Many of them are just the patterns themselves, so I can't show you the exact pattern that I want to do, but this is kind of a sample. She has a whole series of beach and ocean themed pieces, and so I want to stitch just a very small round piece. I cruised on the Queen Mary 2 last fall, and I bought a little like mint tin, and I want to turn that into my portable Ort container. And so I want to stitch just a very small piece from this book and then put it inside of that, so I have some stitching on it. So I do have one pulled. One is just kind of like the round life preserver. One is like a beach chair, a couple of others. So I haven't quite decided which one I'm going to do, but just a very tiny round piece, and that will mount into my Ort container. So that is from Retro Cross Stitch by Veronique Enganger. So those are my kind of plans for 2024, at least the first part of 2024. I really want to make really good progress on these WIPs, move as many of them off the final stitching project list as I can this year, as well as bring in, of course, a number of new pieces, knowing at this point that I am a seasonal stitcher, that I am easily distracted and kind of need to have some structure in terms of larger projects that I am doing. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you enjoyed the WIP parade and the thinking about what I want to do next. If you're in New England or in the area along the mid-Atlantic and you also have a snow day, I hope that you get a lot of stitching in and that you don't have to spend too much time out like shoveling and snow blowing and all of those kinds of things. So with that, I will say stay warm, have a wonderful week, and I will see you all again soon. Bye, everybody.